Hello everybody, new video here from Bikotic, the new specialised Crux. The old version was classed as specialised cyclocross bike, but now the new Crux is more gravelly. In this video we're going to check it out, compare it to some of its stablemates, and compare it to some of its competition. First up, a public service announcement. If you own a Tarmac SL7, you need to go and get a part replaced in the headset because there is the possibility that your handlebars can fall off. Best to go and get that sorted pronto, I would say. In my last video, I pointed out that the Vanderpoel version of the Canyon Air Road had a funny little rubber sock, and on none of the other versions can you actually see that. I got a comment from Derek, and he says that all the air roads are now going to have this rubber sock on. If you don't fancy doing all the photos again, Canyon, it's a pretty quick job to Photoshop it in. Give me a shout and I'll sort that out for you. Okay, so let's have a look at the range available on the UK Specialised website. And the day that I made this video, this is what we had. Top of the range is the S-Works Crux. Specialised marketing bump would have you believe that there's many headline catching features to this bike. For me, however, the headline catching feature is the price. Ouch, she's expensive. But if you're brave and you can see past that price, I think it's a good looking bike. The frame is quite clearly influenced by the Aethos, and we'll get the Aethos up in a minute. Compare back to back with this bike, and as per the Aethos, the Crux is a pretty light frame. You can get some big fat 47mm tyres on it. It's obviously disc brake. It comes with the red E-tap, as if there wasn't enough different types of group set. Explore group set. It's got a power meter. It's 12 speed. I think this cassette is a 1044, and this is the Explore derailleur. Okay, so maybe that's a bit outside your budget. Next down is the Crux Pro. This one's £7,000. Comes with this interesting paint job. I haven't quite decided how I feel about this yet. This has got the 1x4 E-tap Explore group set, but no power meter on this one, which seems a bit stingy for £7,000. So again, maybe £7,000 is a bit outside your budget. Next up is the Crux Expert, £5,500, and this has got the SRAM Rival E-tap Access group set. Again, the Explore version, and if you don't fancy that sort of insipid cream coloured paint job, you can get this one, which I think is much better looking, and this is very Aethos-esque, isn't it? I like it. I think it looks nice. Or you can go down to the £4,000 Crux Comp, but this goes down to the Rival 1 mechanical group set. 1x mechanical, £4,000. Maybe a bit pricey. The Crux Comp also comes in this grey silvery faded colour scheme, which I probably prefer to the baby blue. Now then, if you saw my last video, you will know a little bit about something I'm calling the Bikotic geometry formula. And in my last video where I explained it, I said that bikes to this side of the graph are more racy. Well, I've changed my mind on that a little bit because obviously it depends what sort of race as to whether the bike is racy. So what I've decided, and this is going to seem weird at first, but we have a spectrum, and on the left, rather than racy, we have hummingbird, responsive, agile, flighty, and then on the other side of the spectrum we have the albatross, stable and oblivious to turbulence. I think that makes more sense to me. If you feel you have a better way of explaining this spectrum, let me know. Stick a comment down below. The other thing to bear in mind is, yes, on most bikes the geometry is set, but there's various things you can obviously do to adjust your fit, be it laying back the saddle or changing the stem length or the bar sweep. In this case we put some flat bars on. That looks pretty cool, huh? So with all that said, the geometry formula is never going to be 100%, but what it does do is it allows me to organise bikes in some kind of order, and it flags up anomalies. For instance, for this video I've added the checkpoint, and the anomaly was that the sizing is quite strange on the checkpoint because the Trek website suggested a 56, but the virtual top tube length of the checkpoint in a 56 is actually 58.4, much longer than any of the other bikes that come in a 56. The actual closest to a 56 is the 52. So I added them both to the chart, as you can see here, and actually they still come in towards the same end of the spectrum, so yeah, we do have to take this with a pinch of salt. However, looking at this, the new Specialised Crux for 2022 pops up here. Here's the outgoing version, 2021, and then you've got the Super Albatross, which is the Diverge that we saw in the last video, and then the full hummingbird in this particular group of bikes is the Merida Reacto Team, followed pretty closely by the Tarmac. The Aethos is much more close to the hummingbird end, and the ROUBAIX pops up here. I also added the INFLITE and the GRIZL from Canyon, and I thought we'd compare those to the new Crux as well. Okay, so here we go. Let's compare the S-Works Crux for 2022 to the outgoing 2021 version. Here's fading between the two. We can see that the new Crux is a bit lower at the front, also longer than the old version. It's got a longer wheelbase. Chain stays are the same length, so that extra length is coming front center. Generally the whole stance of the bike is sort of leaning forwards, isn't it? Interesting, the different shape of the bars as we fade through. Quite a different shape there. And the bottom bracket has come down a bit, obviously on the old version, which was a bit more cyclocross, I guess. A bit more gravelly now, it's come down a bit. The new gearing is also clearly very different. We've got the big 44 tooth on the back there. The cassette was much smaller on the old version. So that's going to be much more fun for getting up the hills. So here's the one we've all been waiting for, the Aethos. Fade through to the Aethos. And you can see the difference in sizes of these frames now. The Aethos is a lot smaller. And this really flags up the differences between a road bike and a gravel / cross bike. Got the whopping front chain rings here on the Aethos. Tiny on the gravel bike. Chainstays much shorter on the Aethos. And obviously longer on the Crux, meaning that it's going to be more stable. Much more albatross. Same deal at the front center. Much longer on the Crux. But clearly these two bikes have the same DNA. This is like the bigger brother. Now if it wasn't for the prices of these two bikes, 10,750 and 11,750, I'd be pretty happy to have both of these bikes in my garage. I think they do me pretty well. Thanks very much. So what happens if we compare it to the Super Albatross, the Diverge? And this is fading between the two S-Works versions of these two bikes. You can see the bottom bracket is a lot lower on the Diverge, as we can see there. The Diverge actually has the mullet eagle setup, so it's red ETAP access with eagle on the back, I think is what that is. So look at the size of that enormous cassette. The Diverge has the Future Shock 2. We fade between the two there. Diverge has got a little bit of suspension in it. The Diverge is also quite a bit longer than the Crux. So this is a full gravel bike. It's also got all the mounts to put all your bags and stuff on. So clearly the Crux is meant to be more racy than the Diverge. And if you're thinking the Crux is probably too gravelly for you, but you don't fancy the Aethos or the Tarmac, your other choice is the ROUBAIX. This one here. You can see that the ROUBAIX is a lot more hummingbird than the Crux, shorter, but capable of more off-roading than the Aethos, as you can see fading between the two. The ROUBAIX's got the Future Shock 2 and some built-in compliance, hence this weird shape at the back of the seat post to move around in. So that's the Crux's siblings. Here's the Crux 2022. We obviously need to check out the Checkpoint and the Canyon GRIZL, but we can see here that the Canyon INFLITE, which is the full cyclocross bike from Canyon, is a lot more towards the hummingbird side of the spectrum than the Crux. And if we just get these numbers up, you can see that the wheelbase is a lot longer on the Crux. Reach and stack very similar, same chainstays. The Crux is slightly slacker in the head angle, but the big one is that the INFLITE has a very high bottom bracket, kind of as you'd expect for a cross bike. So first up is the Checkpoint, and that's fading between the two there. It's all quite different at the front end. A lot of Trex bikes now sort of following that look introduced in the Madone and the Amonda. Crux is quite a lot more simple to look at. Interesting asymmetric chainstays on the Checkpoint. Much more normal looking on the Crux. And the Checkpoint has got the ISO speed decoupler here, where the Crux is all very straightforward. No funky gadgets at all. And remarkably, the Checkpoint is actually more expensive than the Crux. Can you believe that? Wowza. Okay, so that's the Checkpoint. Next up is the INFLITE. And this is Canyon's full-blown cyclocross bike. As you can see, it's got this weird shape here. That's for popping the bike over your shoulder as you jump over obstacles and stuff. Nothing like that on the Crux. The INFLITE is quite a bit shorter, and the bottom bracket on the INFLITE is way higher, as we'd come to expect from a full-blown cyclocross bike. So it remains to be seen what the racers will make of the lower bottom bracket on the Crux. Let us know in the comments down below if you have thoughts on that. And then the other bike I wanted to look at was the GRIZL, which actually, when we fade between the two, has a stance very similar to the Crux. As you can see there, it too has very similar chainstay shapes to the Checkpoint. If we look at that there, interesting. I'm guessing they do that for clearance. I'm not quite sure how the Crux has managed to get away with that. I guess these are just super skinny. These two bikes have quite different ideas about how long the stem should be. Stubby little stem on the GRIZL, and the GRIZL comes with this split carbon seat post to give you a bit of compliance at the back here, unlike the Crux. There we go, so that's the GRIZL from Canyon compared to the new Crux. Now then, just out of interest, I can't afford a new specialized Crux. However, what I do have is a cube ATTAIN, and I thought it was interesting to see that these pop up very close to each other on the bike geometry formula chart. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at the ATTAIN next to the Crux and see if I could achieve something similar by just putting some fat tires on my ATTAIN. I think it will go up to a 30mm tire. And if I fade between the two, this is the GTCSL ATTAIN. It's the carbon version, but it's the same geometry as my aluminium version. And if I fade between the two, we can see that they are quite different, but with its pretty high front end, the ATTAIN is pretty laid back. So I might get myself some 30mm tires and go hit the gravel, which kind of leads me to my next question really. If anybody's watching this who knows where there's some decent gravel in the UK, put a comment down below. I've done a lot of mountain biking, I've done a lot of road riding, and I've done a lot of walking, but I don't know of any good long gravel roads up here in Yorkshire. So if you happen to know where there's some fabulous long mythical gravel roads that I can use during the winter, that'd be great. Stick a comment down below. Just before I end this video, I wanted us to take a moment to admire Andreu Lakonici's Red Bull Rampage common cell bike. Unfortunately, Andreu has had a crash at Red Bull Rampage in practice and won't be taking part in the finals, which are tomorrow as I'm making this video. Hope he's alright. He's an awesome rider, and I love the premise of Red Bull Rampage, but boy do I find it hard to watch. So let's hope everybody stays safe. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.